Hi guys, today I wanted to talk about the new construction build process. I get a lot of people asking me some questions on this and kind of how that goes. Versus first-time buyers, there's also a lot of people looking to upgrade because new construction is a lot of what we have available here. So a lot of people go on that route. So let's get into it. First thing I want to talk about is just kind of a little pros and cons list of new construction versus existing. So some of the pros, obviously, of new construction, you get to customize the home, kind of make it the way you want it. So obviously no need for upgrades or updates. Everything's going to be brand new in it. With new construction, you typically get builder warranties. So 1 year workmanship is pretty typical, where they will fix anything that comes up in that first year. So it's also kind of a peace of mind when you're buying a new home. They also do extended warranties for structural things and things like that. Availability. So kind of touched on that. A lot of what's available now is new construction. We're just growing like crazy here in Salt Lake area. So availability is a big one. Time frame is also the other big one. So time frame can be a pro or a con, but if we know we want to move 8 months from now, a year from now, things like that, we can kind of coordinate the completion time of a new home with when we want to move in. So some of the cons of new construction, especially if we're comparing to existing homes, are like cash expenses. So you're always going to have some extra cash expenses that people don't always think about out of pocket for a new home. So things like putting in the yard, landscaping, fencing, probably buying refrigerators, window coverings. So some of those things that you just don't necessarily think about when you're buying in existing homes that are typically included, that are likely going to be out-of-pocket expenses on new construction. Other things would be, construction delays. Always a possibility. So if we're trying to time it right, we might run into some issues there. Another thing to keep in mind is new construction areas. You're typically in a neighborhood of new construction, so you're going to be living in a construction zone for a little while till the neighborhood gets built out. Time frame, the reason I said that can also be kind of a negative factor, is if you need something quicker, obviously, new construction is going to take a little while, and time frame's not always guaranteed. Another thing is negotiating power. So really the builders right now, at least here in this area, are kind of setting the price. We don't have a ton of negotiating power on the price with them, or getting some of these other features negotiated into the deal, whereas on existing homes, a lot of those things we can work out with an existing seller. So some things to keep in mind as we go through to see if new construction is right for you, or if you might be better off with an existing home. Okay, so one of the questions I get most often is, why do I need a buyer's agent for new construction, right? The builders have an agent. Why do I need my own buyer's agent? So here's one of the reasons I tell people. So this is looking at a map here of Salt Lake County. These are just the major production builders here in the area. This is just a few of them. So not even looking at all the custom builders. These are just some of the biggest communities, and this map is constantly changing. Here's a look at Utah County, just kind of the same thing. You can see how many different builders and options and neighborhoods there are going up right now. So a ton of different options. So why do I need a buyer's agent on new construction? Quite a few reasons. So the number one thing is so you want somebody who knows the communities and are going to be able to filter out the options that aren't right for you, right? So from that giant map, not all of those options are going to be the right fit for you. We need somebody who can kind of narrow that down, save you a lot of time, and find options that are what you're wanting, are fitting your goals. The other reason is that a buyer's agent can recommend options from all the builders, right? So they don't work for one single builder. We can say, hey, if you like this home from this builder, you might like this other home from this other builder, and might like the location better or something like that. Different features that we can do there that we can recommend across multiple different builders. This is the other big one. People don't really realize that, but a buyer's agent works for you, not for the builder. Don't forget, the builder's agents work for the builder. So most of the time, even with the buyer's agents, the transaction goes pretty smooth. We'll be working hand in hand with the builder's agents, and there's typically not a problem. But I like to look at it as kind of like an insurance policy. So having your own agent is saying, okay, when things go wrong, or if things go wrong, I have somebody who's looking out for me, who's covering me, and not just looking out for the builder. Because honestly, that's what the builder's agent does. You'll sign disclosures that say you acknowledge that. The other reason typically costs you nothing. We'll want to kind of examine that case by case, but in most cases, especially today we're focusing on like the production builders, which is the vast majority of what home buyers are going to have here. The builders are offering a commission to buyers agents to bring their clients to build homes with them. So it's typically costing you as the buyer nothing, just like buying an existing home that's on the MLS, to use our services. So you still get somebody to represent you, and it's not costing you anything. So definitely recommend getting an agent who can help you with that. Now we'll talk about some of the steps for the build process. We'll just quickly run through some of these. So step one is get to know your needs and goals, kind of the home that you want, location. Once we find that and we're ready to move forward with the builder, we'll actually write the contract. We'll have a pre-construction meeting, design center meeting, four-way walkthrough, also called a pre-drywall walkthrough, and then your final walkthrough and closing. So we'll dive into each of these in a little bit more detail. So the first step really is to get to know you and your needs and goals, what you're wanting in the home. So for this, we're going to want to know, location that you're looking at, kind of floor plan ideas that you like, price point, things like that. Those are the obvious ones. The other big one is kind of your time frame. So just want to touch on time frame a little bit. So if you're going to be needing to move into the new home, in 2 months or under, as far as new construction, you're really going to have little or no customization. If you're 2 months or under, you should probably be considering both new homes and existing homes. If your time frame for moving in is 2 to 8 months of when you want to move in, this is the point where, depending on where we catch it in the construction process, we can still select some colors and non-structural options. So you might be able to pick like your cabinets, flooring, countertops, things like that, but not your structural changes. The home has already been started, plans have already been drawn, we're just picking colors depending on where we find it. And then I guess if you're 8 months or more, that's full build process. So I'd say typically you're 8 to 12 months for most of the builders here for total construction time. Obviously that gives you the most customization. It's going to allow you to choose your lot. It's going to allow you to choose your floor plan, and then any structural options. So structural options being, third car garage, 9-foot basements, maybe adding a grand master bath configuration, something like that, where it really gives you the most customization. The other thing, just to kind of touch on with time frame, is when you sign the contract, you're locking in a purchase price. So you're agreeing to a purchase price when you sign the contract. If it takes 8 to 12 months to build a home, I've had clients who, by the time they move into their home, 12 months after they sign the contract, the builders have already increased their price. They have price increases throughout the year because their expenses went up, but you're still locked into your price. So I've had people move in with equity, not a ton, but a little bit, just based on the market appreciation from locking in the price early on. So that can be a huge factor, really helpful for a lot of people. Okay, so we're going to pretend that we found the perfect home. We know where we want to build it. It's the right floor plan, so we're going to write the contract with this particular builder and go through the full process. So when we write the contract, the things that we're going to lock in, we kind of touched on this: price. We're going to also have the floor plan, exterior elevation. So it could be a Craftsman style, it could be Victorian, could have different window placements, but we'll kind of decide on the exterior what that's going to look like. We'll include the lot and any lot premium. So if there is an extra fee for the particular lot you chose above the base price, that would be included on the initial contract. And then any structural options, which we kind of talked about, like third car garages. Those will all be picked up front when we sign the initial contract. The other thing that will happen is you will put down earnest money. Sometimes they'll call it a construction deposit. This can be anywhere, depending on the price of the home, from $2,000, maybe even up to $10,000. Typically, this is a lower fee. It's not going to be a huge expense, compared to your down payment, but will be due when you sign the contract. All right, so now I have a big warning, and the warning is builder contracts favor the builders. So almost all of the production builders here are going to require that you write the contract on their contract. So it will be something that they've designed. So they wrote the contract, and it's going to be strongly in favor of the builder. It doesn't give the buyer a lot of power like the standard Utah forms do for an existing home, kind of favor the buyer. But that's something to be aware of, and just kind of know some of those things when you're signing the contract. The other big thing when we write the initial contract is pre-qualification and financing. So these builders will require that you get pre-qualified with their preferred lender. You are not required to use their preferred lender. You can use somebody else, but they will require that you get pre-qualified with them just to prove that you can get financing. A couple other things on that is, if you use the builder preferred lender, typically the builders will offer some sort of builder incentive. Could be, extra upgrades, could be reduction in closing costs, things like that, to kind of incentivize you to go with their preferred lender. And typically the preferred lenders are great companies. That's why they're chosen by the builders, is, they're strong rates and good companies to work with. The other big thing to kind of talk about too, with most of these production builders, this is not a construction loan. So you are not actually getting a loan for the property when you sign the contract. The builder is carrying all the financing costs, and you don't get the loan put in your name until you actually close on the home. So you're not making monthly payments, you're not doing anything like that until you actually close. So definitely a big factor. If you're still living either in a rental or a current home, you're not paying double mortgage payments or rent and mortgage during the build process. It's just when you actually close and the loan goes into your name. So the only cash that's coming out of pocket is your earnest money or construction deposits, and then any deposits that you'll have at the design center. So good things to keep in mind too as we go through. All right, so now just a couple other things to be aware of when you're writing the initial contract. So one would be, terminating the contract. What happens if you cancel, and what happens if the builder cancels? These can change and vary by builder, depending on what the builders have in their contracts. So that's kind of why I separated them out, and we'll want to pay attention to as we sign the contract. Other things are builder inclusions and community standard features. So this is a big one. This can really affect your price. So you might have the same builder in two different communities, and let's say in community A, the standard inclusions or standard features are like granite countertops, they do laminate floor throughout, or laminate wood floors throughout the main floor, something like that. Whereas in community B, the standard feature is like laminate countertops and maybe the carpet, everything, carpet in the bathrooms, right? So things you're probably going to want to upgrade. Obviously in community B, it's going to cost a lot more to upgrade to the same features that are standard in community A. So even when you're selecting communities, you might want to pay attention to that, because it might seem like community A is more expensive, but that's because you're going to end up paying more in upgrades, things like that. Other things to pay attention to are the homeowners association. Make sure you know what you're getting into with the community, transfer fees and monthly dues, things like that. And then the last one, how much will your deposits be now and throughout the build process? So we talked about earnest money. The other big one is when you do your design center meeting, most builders will require that you put down like a percentage basically of what you upgrade, usually around 25%. But obviously if you're spending $50,000 in upgrades, it's going to be another $12,000 or whatever for your options deposit, and that's going to be another cash out of pocket expense before you go to the loan. That will eventually go towards your down payment though, so it's not like a fee you pay to the builder. And then I guess lastly here, builder's home warranty. Want to make sure we understand what's included from the builder and take a look at what they're offering. So after the contract is written, next step is going to be the pre-construction meeting. This is typically, maybe a month or two even after you sign the initial contract. They've gotten permits from the city and they're about to start building on your home. So we'll actually meet with the superintendent typically, and you'll discuss the construction process. The other big thing is, we'll want to review your plans, make sure that, the exterior elevations you chose are the same, any structural options you chose are on there, and then we'll kind of review site plans, make sure we know how your home is going to fit on the lot, that sort of thing. Next step. This is the big one. This is the one people get most excited about. This is typically after your home is under construction, and we have that design center meeting. So this is when you pick all the colors, cabinets, flooring, paint colors, things like that. Choose all the options for your home. So tips for the design center meeting. And by the way, this usually happens, while the home is starting to be built. We're maybe 3 months into the process usually at this point. So tips for the design meeting is set a budget before the meeting. You want to know how much you want to spend or can spend before you get there, because there's always going to be more things to spend money on. The other thing is have an idea of what you want, and I say come prepared. You're going to be picking most of the time from what the builder selections, what they have to offer. So it's not going to be fully customized, but have an idea of maybe general colors or a color theme that you want to have throughout your home so that you can kind of filter through some of the very different options that the builder will have and kind of compare your price range and make something fit as you're going through. The other one, be prepared to compromise. So I tell this to everybody. So you could build a $200,000 home, you could build a $2 million home. I've seen both, and both cases, everybody's compromising. You're still not getting everything you want in the home. So there's going to be trade-offs. Just be aware of that. The other thing I like to recommend is make it 2 meetings. So in the first meeting, that's the big one, we really go through everything. We do it kind of quickly. You're going to feel overwhelmed. And then we put in, typically I say, all your want list. So best case scenario. And then I like to take that red line through the want list, take a week to think about it, come back, do a second meeting, and really finalize the options. All right, so I've got another big warning for you. And the warning is, the Design Center meeting is typically your last chance to make any changes. So after the Design Center meeting, if you want to change something and everything's been finalized, you might be charged for it. So you might be charged change order fees for any changes after this design meeting. This is really when we have to have it all finalized. So the next formal meeting that we'll have after the design meeting is called your 4-way walk. Also could be called a pre-drywall walkthrough. Basically the goal of this is to make sure that everything is where it should be. So at this point in your home, all your plumbing is going to be in, your electrical is going to be in, and HVAC. So in your design meeting you might choose where you want can lights, you might have chose where you want outlets, things like that. We're going to make sure that those things are translated from the paper plans to the home where they need to be, actually still makes sense, and just kind of verify that all those things are where they need to be, or if we need to make any changes before the drywall goes up. And so that's really the last one until your final walkthrough. Sometimes this will also be called your home orientation. So at this point your home is pretty much done. There might be a few little touch-ups, but we're basically done. This typically occurs about a week before closing, so just right before, it's right at the end. The purpose of the meeting really is to introduce you to your home. So go through mechanical systems and kind of let you know any specific features of how your home's going to work that you might want to be aware of before you move in. Then the last one, this is where people most often call it like a blue tape walkthrough, something like that. Not really the purpose of the meeting, but it is something that we'll do is mark any last minute touch-ups that still need to be done, and we'll kind of create that final punch list for the final fixes in the home that will be done kind of that week before we actually close. And then last step is settlement or closing. So the first thing to keep in mind is that before you get your keys, the home has to fund and record with the county. And typically that's going to happen 1 business day after you actually sign documents. So if you're signing on a Friday, keep in mind you might not get keys till Monday. There's some things we can do to play with that, but just something to think about. And then I guess last step is, get the keys, enjoy your home. Once you close and it's funded, it's officially yours and it's move-in day. So just kind of to recap, some of my recommendations if you are going with new construction is just make sure that new construction is the right fit for you. Weigh it out, pros and cons versus buying new versus buying existing. Hire a qualified builder's agent. So find somebody who can represent you and kind of will be able to take you through that process so that you're not getting any surprises throughout. And then know what to expect in the build process. That's why we kind of give you a rough overview here, but it's really going to make it a lot less stressful, having an overview and knowing what to expect as you're building the home, and a good agent's going to help you do that. So hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. Let me know any comments or questions. Thanks.